Good Shabbos, everybody. Good Shabbos. I've had the privilege over the past decade plus of being a rabbi, of officiating many a wedding. And one of my favorite parts of the wedding process is not just the day of the wedding itself, but it's the meetings leading up to the wedding with the couple, where I really have the opportunity to get to know them and build a relationship with them. And one of the last things that I do with couples as part of their premarital counseling sessions leading up to their weddings is a future visioning exercise, borrowed from a technique that my father has used with me quite regularly over the years. I ask these couples a question that sounds something like this. It's 7 years from now. We're sitting here together again in my office. There are huge smiles on your faces as you think about your lives and all that you've built together during that time. What is it that's making you both smile? I then ask the question a few more times, each time extending the number of years, from 7 to 15 to 30 to 50. And while many couples have a shared vision for their future, the exercise is an opportunity to really think together about their long-term relationship, and not just at the balcony level, but to dive into details. Are children part of the plan? Have they had conversations about circumcision, public versus private school, how to best prioritize saving goals, how to address any outstanding debt they might be bringing into the relationship, city versus suburban living, living close to whose family? Would they plan to visit Israel and when? What kind of synagogue might they belong to? Where might be an ideal place to retire? And more. In so many ways, it's a chance to help these couples frame what makes for a life filled with meaning, purpose, and community, and to try to help them have a conversation they may never have thought to have had during the courtship period. These kinds of conversations are so important, and it's one of the reasons, admittedly, I'm always a little frustrated when couples pick a friend or relative to officiate their weddings rather than have a rabbi, is they miss out on the premarital counseling. Now, as most of you likely know, we've just celebrated Rosh Hashanah. If you didn't know it, it's now 5783. And my guess is that many of us have made New Year's resolutions. And even if we didn't, during this period of the 10 days of repentance, we're at the very least meant to be doing the introspection necessary to work towards being better versions of ourselves in the year ahead. But I want to challenge us to think beyond these 10 days and beyond the year ahead. Too often in life, we focus exclusively on the short term, with the world around us changing so rapidly, in particular due to the technological advances that we're seeing year over year. It can seem really challenging to imagine what the world will be like in 7 years, let alone 50. But doing so is essential. According to the Management Training Institute, long-term goals are necessary for self-improvement. They give us something to strive for and help keep us focused on where we want to be. Long-term goals help us shape the direction of our lives and careers. The Hebrew word shavua is generally translated as meaning week, and appears throughout the Torah and beyond. We say Shavua Tov, right? Have a good week. And as you may know, its root is the word Sheva, which is the Hebrew word meaning 7. But the word Shavua also has an additional meaning. The word Shavua appears regularly in our tradition, referring to a 7-year period of time. For those who might recall, we're instructed to let our land lie fallow each 7th year, to practice the remission of debts and more. This is known as a Shemitah year, or as the sabbatical year in contemporary parlance. And after 7 cycles of 7 years, we reach the Jubilee year, which we haven't practiced in a very long time. We've stopped tracking it. But the point is that it's not just days that are grouped into 7s in our tradition, but our years are too. And both days of 7 and years of 7 are referred to as a Shavua, a week. We find an example of this emphasis on 7 years in this week's Parsha. Vayetzav Moshe otam lemor miketz sheva shanim b'moed shnat hashmita b'chag haSukkot Bevo kol Yisrael leraot et pnei Adonai Elohecha b'makom asher yivchar, tikra et haTorah hazot neged kol Yisrael be'oznehem. And Moses instructed them as follows. At the end of every 7th year, the year set for remission at the Feast of Booths, when all Israel comes to appear before your God, Adonai, in the place that God will choose, you shall read this Torah aloud in the presence of all of Israel. Basically, the instruction is that during Sukkot, the Israelites, as part of their assembly in Jerusalem, don't forget, Sukkot's one of the 3 times each year the ancient Israelites would make pilgrimage to the temple in Jerusalem. The Israelites were meant to hear the Torah read aloud. Of course, the rabbis debate which sections were meant to be read, where they were meant to be read, what the reader should be standing on when reading, and who the reader should be. But theoretically, this reading took place immediately after the completion of the 7-year cycle during Sukkot, a couple of weeks into year 8, which is year 1 of the new cycle. I'm not good at math, and I followed that. Did you follow that? Okay, good. Logically, this seems to make sense. This is the first major gathering opportunity of the new cycle. And historians seem to suggest that Sukkot was the best attended of the pilgrimage festivals, as people had already stored their harvests and felt comparatively secure about their food supplies, which allowed for a greater willingness to make the trek to Jerusalem and a clearer focus on embracing the teachings that they were going to hear. This Rosh Hashanah, we completed a 7-year Shemitah cycle, and 5783 kicks off a new 7-year week. This is an opportunity to bring intention to thinking about our lives in longer chunks of time. Bringing such intense focus to living in the moment, as our surrounding culture implores us to do, at best can make it harder to collectively problem solve, and at worst turns us away from our tradition's emphasis on planting for future generations. So I want to ask each of you this morning, it's 7 years from now. We're here together in shul. There are huge smiles on your faces as you think about your lives and all that has transpired in that 7-year time period. What is it that's making you smile? Shabbat Shalom, Gemar Chatima Tova, and Shavua Tov.